Interior Minister of Pakistan, Mr. Mohsin Naqvi, passed this statement. Why do the protesters have to come to D Chowk? They can protest outside their own houses. I said that why not protest in their bathrooms? Superior courts of Pakistan have several times interpreted Article 9 of the Constitution that talks about right to life as it is not just a mere biological right of existence. It means that the state is supposed to provide a certain quality lifestyle to the people of the country. What happened on the 26th of November 2024 in Islamabad, the atrocious acts of violence committed by the state of Pakistan, by the government, by the law enforcement agencies of Pakistan, martyrs of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, their families complaining that their applications are not being entertained by the police for the registration of FIR. So whenever this kind of a situation takes place, we submit a petition in the court under section 22A, 22B of Criminal Procedure Code, and only if the contents disclose the commission of a cognizable offence, the FIR ought to be registered, and these are several judgments of the Supreme Court, not just from an international law point of view, but also the Pakistani law point of view, because although we do understand that right now there is law of the jungle in the country, we do understand that there is no rule of law in Pakistan, but we need to remind ourselves that there is a constitution that exists in the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. There is something called Pakistan Penal Code, or the Code for Criminal Procedure, that exists in Pakistan. So I'll quickly refer to that, and later on I'll talk about the international law. First of all, everybody understands that a constitution is primarily, fundamentally a social contract between the citizens of a country, of a state, and the government, the state itself. So there are certain fundamental rights guaranteed in the constitution. For example, the right to protest, the right of assembly, the right of association. If somebody wants to associate himself or herself with Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, they have the right to do that. They have the right to protest in front of the Parliament House. I remember when the Interior Minister of Pakistan, Mr. Mohsin Naqvi, passed this statement that why do the protesters have to come to D Chowk? They can protest outside their own houses. I said that why not protest in their bathrooms? I mean, if the citizens of a country have to protest against the government, they have to protest in front of the Parliament House or the important places where they're noticed, of course. So forget about these rights that we're talking about. Right now, the topic under discussion is about the very right to life. Now, the courts of Pakistan, the superior courts of Pakistan, have several times interpreted Article 9 of the Constitution that talks about right to life as it is not just a mere biological right of existence. It means that the state is supposed to provide a certain quality lifestyle to the people of the country. For example, right to sanitation, education, health, freedom of speech. But we're not talking about that. We're just talking about the right to mere biological existence right now. What happened on the 26th of November 2024 in Islamabad, the atrocious acts of violence committed by the state of Pakistan, by the government, by the law enforcement agencies of Pakistan. I can tell you that as a lawyer who's practiced law for 17 years in Pakistan, I've appeared before courts several times arguing a petition for the registration of an FIR. Some incident has occurred and the police is not registering the FIR, like in the present case. The 12 martyrs of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, their families complaining that their applications are not being entertained by the police for the registration of FIR. So whenever this kind of a situation takes place, we submit a petition in the court under section 22A, 22B of Criminal Procedure Code, and the test to allow that petition for the court is that, I need your attention on this, that just if the contents of the application disclose the commission of a cognizable offence, FIR ought to be registered. That's it. So even if the contents are not truthful, because that is for the investigating officer to decide later on, that the contents were truthful or they were false allegations. So only if the contents disclose the commission of a cognizable offence, the FIR ought to be registered, and these are several judgments of the Supreme Court. So therefore, the martyrs of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf who've lost their lives, their families are entitled to submit applications for the registration of FIRs, number one. And number two, they're entitled to nominate anybody whosoever in those applications. So this right is not being allowed to them. And of course, if 12 citizens who were exercising their constitutional right to protest were killed through sniper shots, it calls for an FIR under section 302, murder of Pakistan Penal Code, and those who were injured, it calls for an FIR under section 324 of Pakistan Penal Code. Now, you must have heard the eyewitness account that talked about the manipulation of the post-mortem reports and the manipulation of the medical legal reports of the injured. this constitutes another offense. I mean, the first offense is not registering the FIRs, and the second offense is tampering with the evidence. Now, this is a very serious offense. This amounts to obstruction of justice. If you are tampering with the post-mortem report, or if you are tampering with the medical legal report, it calls for the registration of a case under Police Order 2002. But as we all know, right now, maybe it is, all these laws are irrelevant in Pakistan, but the point remains, and I insist that we need to keep talking about them, because this is what we are asking for the implementation of. So now coming to the international law point of view quickly, because I know there's paucity of time. I've heard people talking about the International Court of Justice. So I just want to make it very clear right now that International Court of Justice basically fundamentally only deals between the deals with the disputes between states, right? It cannot prosecute an individual or other entities. So therefore, that is not the forum. The forum is United Nations Security Council. This issue needs to be raised in the United Nations Security Council, which is responsible. I'll just talk about it. Which is responsible for maintenance of international peace and security, number one. And it is the prerogative and the authority of the United Nations to pronounce decisions including peacekeeping. It can take measures regarding peace enforcement missions, and it can also take measures regarding non-military pressure that also includes trade embargoes. Now the question is that who will raise it, as pointed out by Dr. Moeed Pirzada. Now unfortunately, international law is also influenced by international politics. We know that there are 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council, namely United States, UK, China, Russia, France, and there are other 15 members who are elected for 2 years. Every 2 years they changed. I can tell you the names, but since there's lack of time, I'll not go into that detail. So I'll just now come to the point that what could be a relevant forum at the international level. There is something called International Criminal Court that was established through the Statute of Rome back in 1998, and it was entered into force on the 1st of July 2002. And as of October 2024, there are 125 state parties to the statute. Now, fundamentally, the International Criminal Court deals with 4 different international core crimes. The first is genocide, the second is crimes against humanity, the third is the war crimes, and the fourth is the crime of aggression. What has happened on the 26th of November 2024 in Islamabad are crimes against humanity. And you will find this in different resolutions passed by the International Criminal Court, or the judgments also, that under the Rome Statute, the International Criminal Court can also prosecute and investigate where the states are unable and unwilling to do so themselves. So we often talk about the Geneva Convention. It talks about the armed conflicts. It relates more to the wars. But when it comes to a situation, a non-combat situation, where a state or a government has like opened fire on its own citizens, committed mass killings, it is the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court.
Yes.
And they can take the action. Now the problem is that Pakistan yet is not one of the members of the Statute of Rome, and there's a certain reason for that. India is not a member, China is not a member. United States has recently asked for cancelling the membership. Israel already has since 2002, Sudan has, and there's another country that has. So the jurisdiction, as far as the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court is concerned, it says, the law says that either if the crime is committed in the territory of the state party, number 2, if the crime is committed by a national of the state party. In our case, this is not possible. Pakistan is not a state party, and the crime is not committed against the national of a state party. So the only option left, and the only exception is where the United Nations Security Council would send a reference. And the last time the reference was sent by the United Nations Security Council was back in March 2005.
Can Amnesty International raise it?
I mean, Amnesty International can, of course, raise it. It can raise voice for it, but only member states, countries have the power to vote upon it. So if you build the pressure through Amnesty International, if you build the pressure through the White House, through the Congress, like Sajjad Barki Saab has been talking about, Dr. Moeed has been talking about, like Colonel Akbar has talked about, his president, Joe Biden. So if you build that pressure, it might lead to that. So So last time it was against Sudan in March 2005 and then against Libya in February 2011. And another option, if United Nations Security Council takes it seriously, for example, I remember back in 1993, there was an International Criminal Tribunal that was established by UNSC for Yugoslavia to investigate and prosecute for crimes against humanity. And in 94 for Rwanda. And there were 61 people who were convicted in that. So I think the best shot that we have is to create that pressure from within the United States and to influence in whatever capacity that we can as an organization, as an individual, as an influencer, whatsoever, to raise voice so that the issue is taken up by the United Nations Security Council. And if UNSC sends a referral to the International Criminal Court, let me tell you, now this is very important. International Criminal Court can prosecute individuals for crimes against humanity, number one, and this prosecution is not subject to any statute of limitation. Which means that if today somebody is in power, he's holding a post and he's untouchable, he's a sacred cow, and let's say 10 years down the line, he's not there, but he's still alive, he can still be prosecuted.
Yeah.
The only exception is that nobody under 18 years of age can be prosecuted, and they've specifically mentioned there that except for someone who hasn't attained the age of majority, which is 18, everybody else can be prosecuted, including the head of the state. So I think this is a sword that would stay there for the people who've committed the atrocious acts of violence on 26 November 2024. I do understand that I might be sounding very theoretical to some people, very idealistic, but I think Sajjad Barki Saab would understand it better than most of the individuals here because his leader quite often talks about idealism. Thank you very much.
Kindly clarify.
First, I remember that guy when the Rangers incident took place. You remember one of the victims who died was an ex-officer of Frontier Constabulary, and his brother said that I went to the police station